It all takes place at night. That's the only time I ever see the ball of light. I can't tell you exactly how I find them, and I'm still not exactly sure what they mean. But what I do know is that taking these photographs has changed my life. I'm from Auckland, which is where I was born. I spent several years over there, moving from one really high pressure sales job to another, chasing the wrong things, chasing money, trying to support a lifestyle that I didn't really want or need, but had found myself having to be in, and working, killing myself working, trying to sustain that lifestyle. New Zealand was really hammered a couple of years ago by the economic crisis, and when you're in the high pressure sales environment that I was in, it just clobbered me like a sledgehammer. The signs that I should have seen that things were wrong were things like, I never paid cash for a car. I always ticked up cars, and silly cars for silly money. The amount of drinking I was doing, obscene amounts of alcohol, not just physically for me to be consuming, but financially. I was smoking cigars. So I'd get up, a daily routine would be getting up, 2 or 3 Red Bulls, a couple of cigars, off to work, a couple more Red Bulls to keep into the day, smoking cigars all day. If we had lunch, some beer or wine, and then pretty much every day into the beers after work, go home more, knock myself out. Never bothering about what any of it was costing me, because I just was terrified to look. I just had this, somehow I thought it was just going to keep coming. It was this accumulating thing where you had to stay motivated and pumped and happy, but what was happening is I was driving to work feeling really nervous, and that sort of eventually evolved into just this overwhelming sense of fear and depression. I mean, I was just falling apart. I was keeping myself together with alcohol and coffee, but just trying to numb it really. I met Kari, my wife, at Xerox. We actually worked together there for some time. That's where we met. As things were spiralling out of control for me, she was very strong in supporting me, but it got to a point where she just couldn't do it anymore, and I was very close to losing my wife, very close, and my best friend. And it got to a point where I needed to either fix what was wrong or I'd lose my wife, and I didn't want that. It was just terrifying for me. Kari's from South Australia. We'd been coming to South Australia for some time, and so we made the decision to come, to pack up, sell everything up, and move over here. And so that was what an enlightening time in my life. And it was interesting because it gave me that little window of time to pick up a hobby, So as part of that whole change and that move, that's when I picked up a camera for the first time. I finally, for the first time in my life, really found myself with some time, and decided to fill that space with a hobby, and that's where the photography came from. It gave me the opportunity to spend time alone. And that was mainly done with just walking. I would just pick up the camera, put a pair of shoes on and grab a bottle of water and walk. And I mean, I'd walk for hours. At home in New Zealand, everything was the same. It was just always the same. It was always green. It was kind of raining or raining. And one of the things I learned really quickly about here in South Australia is that there's this radically changing, evolving environment around me. And we were moving from one season to the other, and it wasn't just a subtle change, but we had the colours changed, the temperature changed, everything changed so dramatically, and it fascinated me because I'd never seen it. I only ever lived in the city, in one city, and in the centre of that city. What a place. You drive an hour from thick, beautiful green vines to the oldest rocky stone in the world. in the Flinders Ranges, and I started to realise this as well, that not only was it changing in itself on its own, but the whole place was different and so varied, and so that it got me even more excited about it. I wanted to see that. Things were kicking along, and I was taking a lot of photos and of the Barossa Valley and of vines and trees and stones and stuff. But I realised really fast that that's the same thing everyone else was doing. I was putting my photos online and joining these groups of the Barossa Valley, and there were photos exactly like mine everywhere. And so I realised pretty quickly that I wanted to try and find something a little more radical. I went online and spent a bit of time hanging around online looking at different types of photography, and pretty quickly discovered light painting. And it was something I'd seen a little bit of, but it just seemed really edgy, and it was a pretty tight little community online in amongst the mass of photography, and it was really attractive to me. So with normal photography, you have the shutter opens and closes in a photograph, and you get a snapshot of what's there in front of the camera. With light painting, what you do is the shutter stays open for a long period of time, and so when it's a dark environment, it brings more light in, and if you move a light around in front of the camera, it stays embedded in the picture. Like a sparkler, when you write your name as a kid with a sparkler, it's exactly the same process, but it is slightly more technical than normal photography, just in that long exposure part of it. I started hooking up some lights and waving them around and getting some really neat sort of rainbow effects and bits and pieces, but like the other type of photography, it pretty quickly got a bit boring for me, and so I started learning a little bit about electronics and how to make the lights brighter and dimmer, and just experimenting with moving these lights around, and ended up just waving it around one night, and all of a sudden it just turned into a circle. And it kind of went from there, and I started getting a rhythm and a cycle about it, and it was just a little more organised, and it started looking really nice on the screen, just changing it from being random into an ordered sort of a circle. And then I will never forget the one night where that circle turned into a sphere, and I still got that photo. I look at it often. That's when the ball of light was born, really. So what I'm doing is I'm swinging the light source in a circle, but I'm turning around, and so it turns a circle into a sphere, which is quite a simple thing. But often people say, well, how come I can't see you in the picture? Well, if you think about this, when you see a photograph of a car going down the motorway, but you can see the white and the red lights going down the motorway, it's quite a common thing, but you can't see the car. It's exactly the same. I'm moving constantly around in the image, which takes a lot of practice, whilst spinning the light around. And so that's how I don't get to, I'm not seen in the image at all. And yet you still see the sphere, and that takes a lot of practice. It's not an easy thing, but there are some times when you do see me, but it's that's how that comes about. The most critical thing when I'm organising a shoot for the Ball of Light is just preparing for the event, and in the week or two leading up to it, I've got to be checking things like if it's near the water tide, I need to check the weather, if the weather's going to be okay, because I need a full moon really to get enough light, and so that's no good if there's cloud. So it's preparing all of these things leading up to it is really critical, because they all have to come together in one short period of time. The moon's just absolutely spot on. It couldn't be on a better angle for where we are, just with the walls, and there'll be a bit of shadow, and it's really nice. The location's perfect here to have a crack at the world record for the number of balls of light, and that stands at 5, so we're going to have a crack for 6. I think we can do it. Start the clock.
And they've done it. Yes, the world record is broken. Oh, the crowd goes wild. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost perfect balls of light. We've got a couple of bung ones in there, but that's alright. They're usable. Wicked, man. That's fantastic. And look, it looks like daylight. It's incredible. Absolutely mind-boggling. Still to me now, each time that happens. My work is done here.
I never planned about what colour is going to happen there. Often it's about how I'm feeling, what the night's like, if it's cold or if it's hot. I never know until I get there what the actual colours are like, and so each location gets a unique ball of light. It's almost like a fingerprint. Sometimes it'll be a really sharp, bright ball of light, or sometimes, especially when I'm on the beach, it'll be a soft sort of ball of light. And I never know what it's going to be like. Often it feels like it's the location that determines how the ball of light's going to be, but they're always different. It's something not a lot of people see or have seen, and it's amazing how people, and even myself sometimes, I look at them and they have this real sense of surrealness about them and uniqueness about them. I often feel like they're a portal into another place or a time, or I often feel like they're a portal for some other entity or some other thing coming into our world. And it's there's often a story or two that goes with some of the images about that, and other people have said that to me as well. They look at them and think, wow, it looks like a portal into another world or another time. And kids just love it. The children, when I have prints out at shows or whatever, the children come up and they grab them and they just, it's amazing. They never look in confusion. They always look in wonder and make stories about them. That fascinates me. There's something about spheres, you know, we're constantly surrounded by them, the planet, the sun. You know, spheres seem to bring a sense of strength and power, but yeah, we're surrounded by them everywhere, and so much of what we have around us and we create as humans are not, you know, it's every rigid and square, and so that's where I love the sphere. If you'd said to me 2 years ago that I'd be in a situation now creating what some people describe as art, and someone would want to have it and pay for it, I would have laughed at you 2 years ago. And now it gives me more joy than anything I've ever done. All the money I've made in jobs that I hated and were killing me have been substituted by something that gives me so much warmth, and other people as well. It's giving to other people. And that's changed my life.
Something so right in the way the world moves today, spitting out fog like some old-fashioned train. There's something so nice.
One of the things I think about all the time is going overseas and looking, maybe see if there's a ball of light somewhere else. There have to be exciting places to go and search for them. I think often about Egypt, and I think about exciting places like China and other great countries, and searching and finding balls of light there. South Australia can't be the only place in the world where there's a ball of light. They have to be somewhere else.
And I won't be tired or sober. And I still know just how you came, just